Yeah.
Like, I don't know anything really about the realities of like running a city. I suppose there's like budget issues and like all this kind of stuff. But like, why though? How why is the whole society built in such a way that it all comes down to budget issues constantly? I'm just sick of it. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like we don't lack people, we don't lack resources. It's just this abstract, weird bean counting game that everyone's committed to that has serious life and death consequences.
Yeah.
It's fucking bizarre to me. The counting of the beans is more important than the health of the community somehow.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's as if because and the counting of the beans is such an abstract thing. It's like almost a spiritual thing.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
feels
right.
it like it really does seem, and it's like I can't help but like I feel like I'm simplifying here, but it seems as if it's just the complete repression of the numinous, like
Mm,
because because life is lived generally as if there is no numinosity.
yeah,
Um, Money is like the most like abstract thing. It's like the most symbolic thing that
right.
we can allow ourselves to interact with or something. um,
Isn't it funny that we put, at least in the United States, we put on our money all these weird esoteric symbols then though.
yes, yeah,
It's kind of
yeah,
like right there in the most kind of repressed in plain sight way or
mm,
something.
right, exactly. It literally is talismanic. It's
Yes.
it represents gold, which in itself is kind of like, I'm
Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and and it's round.
Yes.
Like a
Yeah. Yeah.
mandala,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And this thing you were saying
Shiny.
about, yeah, and the thing like about budgets, I just read today here in Barcelona that they're going to install these like new like cameras in the street that I guess it's
Mm.
like it's the new kind of cameras that have like face recognition and all this kind of stuff.
Oh,
Um,
creepy
a-
things. Yeah.
yeah, and it's funny because, like you say, it's so funny how these kind of measures are obviously, well, it seems like they are a response to like COVID, amongst other
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Which is funny because it's as if it's kind of like trying to solve the issue without going to the root of the problem, just by adding like superficial bandages,
Yeah. Yeah.
without dealing
Well,
with the issue of care. Yeah.
Stafford makes this point at
Mm.
some point, I think, that systems tend to just do more of what they know how to do when they're confronted by a kind of a runaway variable like this.
Oh,
Um,
right. Interesting. Right. Yeah.
because if they lack the kind of the meta systemic house cleaning capability to actually change what they're doing, then they just assume. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just like look at the response to the protest. It exactly is this like protest for police brutality. What's the solution? More police brutality. Throw
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
violence at it. That'll shut it down. Like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same logic of It's funny. It's the same logic of addiction. Of like
Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
you you're addicted to a substance and you feel bad, so you just throw more of that substance
Yeah. Yeah.
onto it.
Exactly. It's exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the system feedback loops itself into a state of like tunnel vision.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Precisely.
Yeah. And of course the same happens with money, right? That like there's a point where
Yeah.
you want more money, and of course it's not because like because you actually want this sort of shiny golden object. Like at least no one would like consciously say that. There is this sort of like
They'd all be
these.
embarrassed if it were exposed that that's actually the level of their
Yeah,
fucking hit about it. It's totally what it is. It's like so obvious.
yeah, and oh man, the internet is really bad for some reason.
Oh no. Hold on.
I'll check mine as well.
Is it any better now?
I think so. It sounds like. Am I okay?
You sound all right.
Okay. Okay. Well, it doesn't matter. It'll just like sometimes you kind of disappear into a vortex of like
Oh,
of
so
glitchiness.
annoying. Shit.
But it doesn't matter. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, no. Huh. And then of course like m- m- money seems to represent the future in some way because it's all the stuff that you'll be able to do. Like you'll be able to. It allows you to do stuff in the future. Um. So
Yes.
yeah. I don't know. Hmm.
Yeah, there's definitely a weird relationship between money and possibility and chance, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Even like all the basic probability examples are always use coins.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
It's the whole coin flip idea.
that's that's
And
amazing. Yeah.
for the Dark Knight, you know,
Mm.
Two-Face.
Oh,
It's hard to
true.
flip a coin to decide who lives or dies, you know?
Mm.
Complicated movie. Those Nolan Batman movies.
Yeah, I think I've only ever watched them like in the theaters when they came out. Um, so I should
Hmm.
rewatch.
I'm not sure, you know, what they're doing consciously. I know there was a lot of criticism about them being kind of right wing apologetics or something, you know,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I'd heard that.
because they kind of you know justify Batman's vigilante violence in different weird ways, you know.
Hmm.
Um, um,
Yeah, there's that whole thing with like the sometimes the people need to be lied to, and
yeah,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I
it's
think
interesting.
there's other weird unconscious stuff going on though, you know, because really when I watch The Dark Knight now, my identification is largely with the Joker, you know. The
Mm-hmm.
Joker's the secret star of that movie anyway. He's the best performance and what everyone was freaking out about when that movie dropped, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and Nolan leaves that completely ambiguous and unresolved. Like you never see what happens to the Joker. He's just kind of left suspended, literally. You know, he's
Mm.
left hanging upside down. Uh, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, right, he is. Of course.
yeah.
Yeah. I know I'm so unfamiliar with Nolan, to be honest. Like I've
Mm.
because I get the feeling also that I a rewatching of the Batman movies would be good because every other movie I've seen from him seems to conform to like an obsession with memory and stuff. Like there's Memento and
Yeah,
like
yeah. He's very into
Interstellar.
that stuff. Yeah,
Interstellar was also kind of like returning to the
and and
past
in
and
and Inception, of course, all the dream stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I'd be really interested to see, yeah, how Batman fits in, if it fits into his theme.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, yeah, Also, like, yeah, I've only watched his movies once, all of those. Um, I remember not liking Interstellar that much.
Mm,
Um, like at a sort of, and this is something, it's complicated. This happens a lot with movies where I never know when a movie is kind of like triggering something in me that I don't want to look at,
right.
or whether a movie is actually like something that I don't like. Like it's difficult to tell the difference sometimes. uh
Right.
Between like, do I actually like, if I got over this shadow issue that the movie is pointing at, would I then like this movie? Or is the movie going to not,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
I, Nolan's a weird director because I can't ever figure out if I actually like him or not either.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Um, I I enjoy his films, and like I was really into Inception. I watched that a bunch, but these days, going back watching The Dark Knight, there's a kind of clunkiness or something to what he does.
Mm.
Like people think this is kind of Kubrickian big guy, but to me, he's marking really simple big blocks around usually.
Mm.
It, it's kind of clear in Batman, especially like thematically. I'm not sure how sophisticated he is. Really, his films are like always very structurally sophisticated. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Inception speaks to you, all this crazy non-linear editing, all these different timelines, and how they all add up and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But the kind of the meaning of the films, the
Uh-huh.
conscious meaning or whatever, like I'm never that sure even what they're saying, even
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
and
think I know
maybe
what you
that's a
mean.
limit. Like I haven't done like a deep crunch on Nolan or anything, so maybe none of that's true, but that's kind of how I often feel about it. There's just something a little missing somehow ultimately in his movies.
Mm.
They're missing a, what is it? They feel like haunted houses a little bit. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they're so kind of constructed, and I can see how the gears are working usually. Like with the Batman stuff, it's like I can see how he's working backwards from uh, irrational conclusions and then constructing all these like little logical bridges to make you accept the world.
Oh,
There's
okay.
somehow there's a heavy-handedness to how he does that. You
Mm.
know,
Yeah.
it's really obvious. Like here's the thing that will set up the plausibility of the existence of Batman's flying car. Like 5 steps out. I can just everything in this movie start to look like gadgets that are facilitating plot motion. And often these gadgets are like very baroque and beautiful and amazing, but there's still
Mm.
it's like a weird mechanical movie world. There's nothing organic left in it, and no
Ah,
spontaneity left in it because of that. I have the impression they're storyboarded down to the micron, and
interesting.
it's different than Kubrick. Kubrick left room for chaos and
Yeah.
improvised a lot. I'm convinced. Like look at The Shining. Those performances are
Yeah.
live. And
Yeah.
and the thing is, I don't think Nolan ever really did that except with The Dark Knight. Um, fucking Heath Ledger brought that chaos to that movie. Like
Yeah.
the Joker just is that. It's this really live element in that movie.
Mm. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I don't think there's an equivalent in really any of Nolan's other films. It's always,
Yeah.
this other thing. So
That's weird, man, because it's like in the new Joker, um a similar kind of thing happens in that it's the performance.
yes,
It's Joaquin Phoenix's performance that brings the chaos. it's almost as if the Joker character is like this blank space in the middle of a very structured movie that allows like a crazy improvisational performance to emerge, and then
Yeah,
that
interesting.
it then highlights the the structuredness of everything around that performance. Like
Yes, yes,
Heath Ledger stands out amidst this sort of blocky Hollywood type of
totally.
mechanical world, uh, or something.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's really interesting because he
Mm,
stands out against the blockiness of the visual world of the film because it's this
mm.
world of buildings, cityscapes, and you know,
Yeah.
and the Joker's like in a, he's wild and organic. His paint is like halfway running off his face all the time, and his hair
Mm,
is greasy and unwashed, and uh,
yeah.
uh, and but then he also stands out against the blockiness of the movie apparatus in this
Hmm.
weird meta way. Um,
Right.
he seems the most real in a
Mm.
strange way out of anything in that movie because Batman is so clearly artifice, like the ridiculous voice that Christian Bale does for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Batman voice, whatever. Like it's so funny and
Yeah.
fake, and it makes for a very interesting dynamic there because it does seem like
Mm.
Batman's kind of a pretend freak, but the Joker's the real deal. You know. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I guess that's where this this anxiety comes in of not knowing what the movie is trying to say sometimes.
yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because um because exactly I it's as if it exemplifies the typical sort of sync dilemma of intentionality versus non-intentionality, but it's like within a non-sync world or something. Like it's
Yeah.
that same dilemma. Because like I don't know, I remember being. I'd have to watch it again, but I remember being really impressed by Memento. I when I watched
Yeah.
it,
Me too.
I couldn't believe it was the same director for some reason. It feels like a completely different style, but then it isn't. It's thematically very similar. It's also
Yes.
very constructed and mechanical. Um,
Yes.
but that just yeah, I guess that sort of confuses me even more, especially considering how popular Nolan's movies have been. Um,
Yes. Yeah,
because
he's
then
quite interesting in
yeah,
that way. That
mm,
he's managed to pull off somehow being a popular blockbuster movie maker
mm.
because we're kind of or at least I was kind of criticizing him. You know.
Oh man, I'm sorry, I lost you there.
Yeah. Yeah. We completely lost contact there. That was crazy. Um,
Oh, y-
are we
y-
back?
I think so.
Okay.
You were criticizing him.
Yeah, I would say I was criticizing him a little bit, but objectively speaking, like his movies are very weird. You know,
Yes,
they're uh,
exactly.
they're
Yeah.
completely strange. Like I love them. He's a
Hmm.
weird director making weird movies and
Mm.
passing them off somehow in the middle of Hollywood. So I
Yeah.
I'm a Nolan fan,
Hmm.
but uh, yeah, I just remain kind of confused by him. I suppose.
Hmm.
Because really, I can't figure out what The Dark Knight means still. Even
Mm.
even though even though I think I've kind of ID'd it as like a Corona crisis precog film, you know,
Yeah.
I kind of see the historical overlay, but still I don't know like what's the meaning ultimately of this collision between Batman and the Joker in any context, you know. Because what Nolan says in the movie is, or he puts it in the Joker's mouth, you know, but it's like, what happens when an immovable, what is it? What happens when a unstoppable force meets an immovable object? I think that's it.
Oh,
Like
right.
that.
Interesting. Yeah.
and then he basically just never answers it because the Batman doesn't defeat the Joker, and the Joker doesn't defeat Batman. And it happens this very specific way because the Joker keeps trying to get Batman to break his moral code, which involves sort of not killing indiscriminately, you know. And so Batman ends up saving the Joker because the Joker's falling to his death, but Batman grabs him and strings him up. But then it's just left there because Batman just goes away and the Joker's just hanging there. And then I don't think the third film says anything about it. It just because it wasn't planned. Like, Heath Ledger died. He wasn't supposed to die. The Joker was supposed to be in the third movie.
Oh, I didn't know that. Right. Huh. Yeah. Have I lost you again?
No. I'm here.
All right.
Sorry.
God, there's so much to sort of think about. I mean, I remember also. I'm speaking from memory from like maybe 10 years ago or something. So
yeah.
But I feel as if the end of Inception and the end of the other one, Interstellar, I remember feeling like there was this weird like thematic, like aesthetic link almost between them that
I agree.
Yeah?
I agree. Even as you say it, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I remember like the end of Interstellar is almost like a montage, as far as I can remember. It's suddenly like the pace picks up, and there's just like a lot of information is given in very little time. Just voomp, like the end of the movie is just almost like a deliberate sort of like montage style ending. I remember like he suddenly like, I don't know, 10 years have passed and this happens. And there's huge. And I think that the end of Inception was something similar, where suddenly the end of the movie is this big sort of whoomp of compression. I don't know. I wonder what that is. What is that style? Like what is it within the movies and yeah. What can it say about Batman? I guess. Anyway.
Wow. Yeah, these two films are really pretty similar, actually, just thinking through it now, Inception and Interstellar, because don't they both involve kind of time stretch mechanics? Because in Interstellar, there's like the planets that it's going to be like this many years on this planet versus this many years on this other or something.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's pretty similar to the dream idea, where the deeper layers of the dream move slowly or more quickly or whatever.
Oh, fuck. I hadn't thought Inception. Of that. That's amazing. Yeah.
it's like the same thing. It's just one in dream space and one in like sci-fi space.
Whoa. Dude, I don't think I've ever seen anyone mention that. That's that
crazy, huh?
It is. It's the same thing. It's just going down these layers into like the depths, and things get like slower and slower as you get down.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the movie, it's like there's like it's almost like the end of the movie just springs back into ultra fast, like it's like a catapult. It like sort of voomp, kind of like propels you back out with delivering a lot of conclusive information.
Well, in in Interstellar, there's kind of that moment in eternity as well, right?
Yes.
All those looking at time from the outside, almost, you know.
Yeah.
It's like the self. Time gets slower and slower as you go down these layers, and then in the middle, it's like null time, eternity.
Yes.
In the
Yes.
center, and Inception has that with the totem, the spinning top. It's another selfie thing, rotating
Oh, true. Yes.
gyroscopic thing. Yeah.
Right. It turns forever, kind of thing. It's like it's
Yeah.
the movie's
Yeah.
trying to imply that, which is funny to me because that's
Yes.
always how I felt about dreams. Like I've always felt that in dreams you can descend down deeper and deeper, and at some point at the center of the dream, so to speak, there is eternity. So it's weird to me that this is reflected so well. Of course, in Hellraiser 2 as well, like the labyrinth, you go deeper and deeper into the labyrinth, and then the center of the labyrinth, there's this diamond of eternity.
Yeah.
I just find that crazy because it's as if like, again, it's tricky to make these statements, but if I kind of pose the possibility that that is factually true, that there is some sort of way in which you can describe the dream world in that way, then it's expressing itself through movies. God, I don't know. I mean, yeah. It's funny because it's nothing new. I mean, it's the usual sort of thing that sync research deals with. It's just that it's kind of like there are these moments where it just, like in the case of Christopher Nolan, it confuses me because it's so like this structure in the movies. It doesn't seem entirely unconscious. It seems like Nolan is thinking about these things.
Yes, yeah. That's why it's confusing, probably, because it's not entirely unconscious, because he's thinking about it psychologically and all this, you know. But it's not entirely conscious either. I'm not convinced he thinks about his editing style as a structural reflection of a psychological transcendentality like the self, you know. I think that's probably just happening, you know. He's following his nose with it.
Yeah, I'm reading his Wikipedia. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I guess I'll just have to watch Nolan films now. Wasn't
like there's a scenario that plays out in The Dark Knight, you know, where it's like eventually there's like people on two different boats, and one of the boats is just like people from Manhattan, basically, and the other boat, I mean, I know it's like Gotham or whatever, but you know, there's like rich people on one boat, and then on the other boat, it's all these criminals, and there's a bomb on each boat, and the one boat has the detonator for the other boat, and vice versa. And there's like a time, like it's the craziest scenario you can imagine, basically, like hilariously so, you know, and kind of like almost like something Nolan's pulled out of like an ethics 101 philosophy thought experiment or something, you know. And the thing is like, who's gonna blow up who first, you know. And in the end, they don't blow each other up. The convicts don't blow up the bourgeois, and the bourgeois don't blow up the conflicts. And so it's proof against the Joker's claim that people are fundamentally rotten and will eat each other when they get a chance. So Nolan puts this weird thing in that's like this crazy action scene, but the point of it is to like
Make
to
a logics
refute
professor kind
this.
of, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's like everything has the quality of like an argument, kind of, in a Nolan movie. There's something essay-like about his
Yeah.
approach.
Yeah. I remember feeling this with Interstellar as well, and this is what I didn't like about Interstellar
Mm.
is that there were moments in the film where it felt like it was a I don't know what the best word is. Yeah, like an essay or like a sort of weird propaganda movie or something where the characters
Yeah,
are there
yeah.
was this sort of
It's a lecture. It's a
mm.
lecture. Nolan wishes he was a professor in some way. I think he's going to lecture you about a topic through his movies. He's a great lecturer, very
Mm.
visual, you know. But yeah,
Yeah.
it always has this quality. I always feel like I'm being lectured a little bit, and moralized too a bit. There's a simplicity somehow, even kind of within the ambiguity. There's
Mm.
you know
Yeah.
I-
Yeah.
maybe that's part of my frustration is he seems a little timid to just admit that he's making that kind of a movie, kind of a propaganda piece,
Uh-huh.
so he
Uh-huh.
so he
Yeah.
disguises it in ambiguity, but the ambiguity is a little forced sometimes,
Uh
uh, until it isn't in like The Dark Knight, where this weird performance and some like sync kind of gets in the way of what he's trying to do.
yeah.
Maybe, I don't know.
Right, that's interesting because it's exactly if it's as if he were aware that he's making a lecture, it might like maybe I would like it better. It would be more like a sort of like a YouTube video or something. Like he's sort of trying to he's making an exposition of information of arguments. Um it
Right.
I'm I'm getting sort of I'm looking at his upcoming film, by the way, which will
Oh,
be
I have
called
no idea what it even is. What is he working on?
it's called Tenet, and
Tenant. Interesting.
the premise is a secret agent is tasked with preventing World War III. Um, and
Okay, interesting.
the
A little
title,
late on that, man.
yeah,
Aren't we in it right now? Seems like
it's
we are.
it's weird too because this is what's weird about this type of movies. The poster shows this guy, and the image is sort of cut in half, so the guy's body is mirrored on itself,
Okay.
and it's like it's clearly like a mirroring. And then the title of the movie, Nolan says, the title is a palindrome, and so
Oh,
it's a
he's up to his
palindrome.
old tricks again, I say.
So he's it's like mixing the idea of World War III with these themes of time, and it is sort of this sort of weird eternity,
Yeah.
which is weird because like it
It is weird. I've kind of noticed
yeah.
a weird trend in this direction, though. Maybe, I don't know. Um, I just think of like the last John Wick movie
Oh
that
man, I've only
concludes
seen the
with
first.
like, yeah, the second one is crazy because are there three now? Even maybe it's not. Maybe I'm thinking the second to last one or something. But anyway, in the second one, the final action sequence takes place like literally in some kind of like diamond like mirror world. Like it's all this like CG glass reflection fragments
Wow.
flying around everywhere. Like it's crazy and numinous and feels very selfie to me. It's just this ballet of stupid Hollywood gun violence, but like in this geometric like crazy diamond refract world.
Oh,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Or then I just even think of like the titles of these movies. Like what was it? It was like the last Avengers called like Infinity War or something.
Fuck yeah,
That
absolutely.
juxtaposes it right in the title, like a war and eternity in
Ah man,
infinity. Like,
yeah, that's so stupid. Like that, that almost makes me angry. How I
yeah,
don't know
you
why.
know,
Yeah, yeah, that's funny.
Infinity
Infinity War. It
War.
kind of pisses me off because it's like it's God. I don't even know how to feel about that. To be honest,
I would
yeah,
be laughing a lot more, but I can't laugh with this
right.
stand-in. Like it
Ah,
hurts me.
yeah,
Whew, that is funny though. Fuck.
yeah,
Infinity War. It sounds made up. It sounds like a movie that would be in the background of Idiocracy. You know, like a
yes,
like a
yeah.
pan by of that dystopia. Like Infinity War would be the name of a
Infinity
movie
War.
on the
Yeah, yeah,
pretend Idiocracy movie theater. Yeah.
yeah. And it's annoying because it's like this is it's a theme. The idea that the idea of connecting World War III as an idea with
Yeah.
Infinity
Yeah.
is obviously, it's something David Blade has talked about. It's something that like other people have talked about. Like it's so
Yeah.
weird how
Well, it's weird
uh,
because it would
yeah,
represent some kind of like a transcendence of the first two. You know, it's the dialectic thing. Level 3 for Bateson and all that. You know, there's always like it's always
yeah,
that infinity flip when you get to 3. So it's like built. I think it's a
uh,
built-in association. You know,
I'm seeing
somehow we have an implicit sense that like World War III will summarize and transcend the first two. And there's an
mm,
implicit of like there's an implicit union of opposites in there, even
mhm.
though World War One and World War Two aren't opposites, but there's still two things that ought to transcend it in the unity of the third thing, World War Three. And
Yeah.
also we're just programmed to think of these movies as coming in 3 parts. So it's the last and biggest part is going to be 3. It's the
Ah,
conclusion of
that's
the trilogy, you know.
crazy. Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
the
yeah.
apocalypse. It's the last one. It's the last war. It must be World War III, you know.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I'm looking at an image of John Wick here. There's this screenshot of him haloed by like this,
Yes.
like obviously Christy kind of halo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And
I need to watch that
that's an
again.
interesting one, you know, because it's the pure male revenge fantasy film. Like
Yeah.
it's very psychologically utilitarian in that way. You know, it's like
Aha.
a genre of film that exists to placate a very particular kind of sexed, gendered,
Mm,
like fantasy idea of like
mm.
the righteous application of violence on the basis of you killed my kid, you killed my wife, you killed my dog. So no one can tell me that I can't kill as many fucking faceless weird bad guys as necessary to like get to the into this movie.
Yeah.
Basically, it gives you complete license morally to just
Mm,
enjoy the violence, basically, and it's so obvious in how it sets it up. You know,
yeah.
it's so close to pornography in that way. You know,
Mm,
the
mm.
plot just barely exists. It just exists to facilitate um, enjoyment of the primary action, which in this case is going to be violence, and in porn would be sex. You know.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
uh, uh,
Yeah, it's funny because I remember feeling that with the first movie as well. And like you say, it's as if what's funny is that the movie seems completely aware of that. Like it's or maybe not, but it's
yes,
like the
yes,
plot.
completely. Yeah, yeah.
The plot is comical in a certain way
Yes,
that
it's
makes
aware.
it
It's self-aware of
mm,
this. I think. Yeah.
of what it's doing. And then obviously, like you say, that in the first film, the scenes of violence are so like beautifully choreographed and just so
Yes.
pleasing to watch that you can
Yes.
tell that like this is a movie about just like viscerally enjoying, aesthetically enjoying the sensation of lashing out,
And
of
it's so
letting go.
interesting that they cast Keanu in it, you know, because
Yeah,
he's become this meme of kind of like a person who was really sort of struck down by life in a lot of ways all at once, but um, remains like a good stand-up dude or something. You know, I think
yeah,
he's thought of as kind of like one of the last good men in Hollywood or something. You know,
yeah.
so they've placed the most like ethically upstanding actor
Mm.
or something by popular association anyway, that they could in the role, and also an actor who already is related to Christ strongly through Neo, you know.
Yeah,
So that
yeah.
makes John
Uh,
Wick a kind of action Christ, you know. It's definitely like movie violence Christ or something. John
I'm
Wick.
really interested. Yeah, I'm really interested in that. I really need to watch the other two because it seems as if this could have, of course, something to do with the Antichrist of like enjoying, like
Right,
not
right, right.
not feeling, which is obviously has something to do with Hellraiser as well. It's sort of not feeling guilty about enjoying um violence in the sense of like artistically, I want to say
Right. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
hard to know what, like it's hard to know how to put it into words because obviously it's tricky, but it's as if in order to somehow I always feel that in order to heal a lot of actual physical violence, it's the usual sort of, it's the Jungian thing, it's the whole sort of
Yes,
thing.
well it's just an aspect of violence. Like it
Mm,
can be enjoyed. That's just the
exactly.
truth. People enjoy it.
Yeah,
Many people enjoy it.
yeah,
Uh, and that's a strange fact about human beings that feels it's very cathartic to admit and recognize, I think, you know. So these movies are strange because they're kind of trying to guide you through that catharsis without being too rudely conscious about it. I just
mm,
to make you actually confront the fact that you enjoy the violence and don't care about the story.
mm,
Uh,
mm.
and so John Wick brings you close to that realization with the self-aware humor, but stops short of pushing it aggressively to your
Yeah,
face. It's interesting how they've tuned it. You can think of it kind of cynically that they've
mm,
tuned it that way because it makes it that's how they're going to make the most lucrative movie, you know.
hmm.
But also I find it very I find this film's very interesting. The
Yeah,
John Wick ones in particular, because they do feel so kind of crafted, with a lot of attention to the psychology of how people are going to relate to the violence, even
yeah.
if it's in a kind of manipulative way. It's considered, therefore, you know. Uh,
Interesting. Yeah, I remember really enjoying the first one. Like, I remember finding it really funny as well. Like how it was almost like a comedy in some
yeah,
way.
me too.
How
It's hysterical.
because like it's obviously, yeah, and it's obviously aware that it's funny. That's the thing. It's kind of
Oh yeah,
like
there are clear
mm,
jokes and all that stuff. Yeah, it really is a funny movie.
in
Uh,
yeah,
and it's funny in a way you know that the Liam Neeson films weren't at all. You know the ones I'm thinking of, Taken or whatever. Um,
Oh, I've never watched many Liam Neeson movies actually.
oh man, well, there's this whole like series of films. I think there's like two or maybe three of them
Uh-huh.
that Liam Neeson did, where it's the same thing. It's like you kidnapped my daughter and like raped my wife or something, so I'm just gonna
Mm.
kill a million people. But it's played completely straight. Like that's my recollection anyway. Is that there's no humor. There's not an ounce of humor in it really. And John
Yeah,
Wick
this yeah.
is like doing the same thing, but I feel like it's almost consciously making fun of the Liam Neeson movies.
Ah ha ha. Well, like I'm looking at screenshots of it of Liam Neeson
Yeah.
one, and the you can immediately tell there's a difference in luminosity. Even like all of the John Wick screenshots are like religious almost.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Which I love because it's funny. It mixes three things that we conventionally don't associate with each other, which is the religious comedy and
Oh
like
my God. And violence.
and
It
violence in it.
it
We yeah.
it's the same as the joke comedy.
Mm. Oh, Joker, yeah.
Isn't that just the same mixture?
Yes.
Religious, comedy, and violence.
And isn't the Joker trying to get Batman to enjoy killing, basically?
Yes. Um, Although I was thinking more of the new Joker movie where
Mm.
Batman doesn't even exist in it. It's like a pure Joker movie. Uh, but yeah, that's it in the Dark Knight. Yeah, he's trying to get Batman to kill and admit that he enjoys it. Exactly.
Yeah. I think it's also like because um how do I say it? It's tricky to talk about these things, obviously, because mm, it's hard to know how to articulate it, but it's as if you are already stuck in a cycle of suffering. Like
Yeah.
you're already inflicting violence on everyone around you and on yourself from like a Buddhist kind of point of view, or from like a, like you're so that in some weird way, in order to become aware of the way in which you're stuck in this cycle of suffering, you it seems as if what is being suggested by these movies and by like other things, dreams, psychedelic trips and stuff like that, is that there is something about that repressing the fact that you enjoy it just makes you be more unconscious of it, which makes
Yeah.
it worse.
Yes.
Basically,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah. Yeah.
already you're already in it, so you might as well learn to accept the ways in which you enjoy it in order to become more aware of it, in order to improve whatever can be improved, basically.
Yes. So that you can look at it directly and make sure that you relate to it ethically.
Mm.
Because if you
Yeah.
let your unconscious determine the ethics, it's gonna do its unconscious ethics, which aren't any kind of ethics that
Yeah.
we would want in the world. It turns out. Um,
Yeah.
so you have to take
Yeah.
control. You have to take control of that thirst for violence and uh,
Mm-mm-mm.
uh,
Yeah, that's funny.
apply a conscious ethical framework to it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the thing I always feel with these movies in general, that um, is so counterintuitive, which is that uh, it seems as if in order to bring some kind of healing
Mm.
to a situation,
Mm.
you 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 need to dive into it, which is counterintuitive because I think that what we tend to believe in an egoic, consciously cultural kind of point of view is that you need to get rid of the thing, right? It's kind of what we were saying before, that the system will, like, if there is something that the system wants to get rid of, and like there is a protest against violence, then just more violence will be applied to it, because
Right.
it's like the ego's assumption is that if there's something you don't like, you just need to get it away. You need to, like, get rid of it. Finding it hard to articulate, really, but
It's kind
because
of like
yeah,
it's a threat because it might cause the ego to transform. So it
right. If the ego were to right, if the ego were to integrate it, that would mean the ego would become something different. Because
yes.
an
Yes.
ego with an integrated element that wasn't in it before is a completely new ego.
Is a new ego. That's right. Yeah. It involves a death. Yeah, it implies a death. You know, from
Yes.
transitioning from the old to the new state. Yeah.
Which is funny, because maybe that's why this theme of Antichrist is so, like, present in movies, and maybe even recent movies. Maybe this is something that is, like, growing in intensity, that the Antichrist, the idea.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder about that, you know, if Jung was alive, if he wouldn't say, you know, like, look at the obvious, like, intensification of Antichrist energy in the popular consciousness, you know, because it really does
Yeah.
seem like it's become more and more central. I mean, I just think of like Marilyn Manson even and stuff like that, you know.
Right. Yeah. And he's like, a yeah, the Joker kind of thing.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because then it's like,
Well, isn't it
yeah,
funny? It's funny how the Antichrist is an implicit celebrity, you know, because Christ is a performer in some
mm,
way. He's on the mount, the spectacle of his suffering, and so the Antichrist is for sure going to be
mhm.
a star. You know, there's a natural link to movies, celebrity, and movie stars, and all of this.
That's fascinating. Yeah, the
And
Antichrist
also
needs
because
to
he's a
be seen.
deceiver, you know, he's going to lie to everybody, and that would seem to involve things like cinema too, as a like illusion making thing, you know.
Ah, fuck.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's like the Antichrist in movies is something that has to be seen. Like, yeah, it needs to be popular. It needs to be seen, because that's how you identify with it, by
Yeah.
seeing it. It needs to be in conscious, in plain sight. It needs to
Yes.
be
Yeah. Yeah.
in the mainstream. So that maybe these like the Antichrist uh, isn't something that exists outside of art. Maybe, like, it is a performance. It has to be something that is
Yeah.
beheld artistically or something.
I'm thinking more and more. It's, you know, it's a representation of the systems that human beings have built without empathy. It's just the sum total of
Interesting.
those things that make Rome Rome, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes.
No, I'm talking about the Antichrist in a particular sense here. Obviously, I'm not talking about, say, the alchemical Antichrist, some kind of proper, weird, negative version of the self or something. That's a much more esoteric idea, I would think. But kind of the more Christian-y idea of the Antichrist, as just a source of great evil at the end of time. I think that source of great evil is it's what the species is doing to itself through its group organizational aspects that are destroying it and just destroying the planet.
Wow. Yeah. Huh.
It's all the Antichrist, man. It's also numerous. It's just numerous. Police brutality is a big part of it, and all these terrible healthcare systems that don't work, and just all this violence we commit against ourselves, and like systems that eat people to generate profits on the other side. Those are just bad systems, obviously, and very Antichrist kind of systems. They just like meat grinders,
Man, yeah. I was thinking of I was thinking literally this morning of meat grinder as a as a symbol for all of this. Yeah.
Yeah, 2020 meat grinder.
Meat grinder.
The year it became impossible to deny that you are living in a giant meat grinder, masquerading as a society. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and gosh, right, because that's the whole. Yeah, fuck. It's so difficult to approach this this material. It reminds me of Inception in some way. It reminds me of lucid dreams. I want to sort of approach this for a second because, in lucid dreams, there's this whole thing where when you become lucid, suddenly dream characters will try to wake you up or like prevent you from being lucid.
Yeah. So funny.
And
your brain just sends out this like reality defense squad that's going to try to compensate for your attempt to become lucid.
It's funny because it's as if I'm seeing more and more that this is basically what happens everywhere. It happens in reality. It happens in waking life.
Yes.
That somehow systematically any lucidity must be squashed.
Exactly.
And it's funny because I sometimes get this uncanny feeling that this happens. It happens at a level that can be explained in conventional non-syncy terms, right? Because like there are sort of anything that kind of represents a materialization of awareness, like some sort of act, some sort of behavior that materializes an insight into the nature of the system, is a threat to it, and will be like it'll some sort of a police response or will be applied or other kind of things, but that it also happens in a sync kind of way, and that's what makes it frightening as well, because you realize that there is a way in which the anything that represents lucidity in some way or represents individuation will be attacked spiritually, so to speak.
Yes, yes, yeah.
By demons. It kind of reminds me of the usual thing with like Buddha and these kinds of stories where before reaching enlightenment, there is always like this prolonged period of demons just relentlessly attacking Buddha, and it, because it seems as if in Sync, for example, there are these moments where it seems like sometimes your attempts to do things will be squashed. You know, and astrology speaks to this as well, right? Like sometimes there are times when maybe your your attempts to do things that represent an integration of something that the system would not want you to integrate is squashed in terms of Sync, in terms of like you encounter events that in material terms can't be explained by like cause and effect, but that as a whole seem to be preventing you from doing something, or seem to be like
yes
the dark aspect of Sync, the way in which it's not always something that is benign and helping you along your journey, but that is actively like trying to block you.
Yes. Or I would almost say,
yeah.
you know, it's hard to evaluate whether it's positive or negative often.
Yeah.
Because you don't know the full story yet, you know. But it does seem kind of that, yes, sometimes Sync attracts, but sometimes it also repels. It seems to be leading you towards places, but also sometimes it seems to be discouraging other places. And it's hard to know why, you know. Maybe it's actually protective when it's telling you not to pursue something, and you just can't understand yet why you needed this horrible detour. But maybe the alternative was going to be even worse, you know. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I definitely agree that it definitely sometimes has a, well, I mean, it speaks to just the general weirdness around precognitive phenomena anyway, you know. Are they warnings, you know? There's something ominous about them. Sync does sometimes have that quality of like it's something coming from a danger, saying stay away.
I know it's tricky because it reminds me of like when I took mushrooms, having these weird sort of dips. The experience would sometimes dip into something scary, and the visions would literally like depict scary things, demons in hell and stuff like that. And if I went along with that fear, it got worse and worse. But the second I dipped out of that and I realized that, oh wait, I'm okay. I don't need to let myself, you know, be cowed by this fear. The second I switched into that, the demon visions would transform into nice characters, and they would laugh and they would celebrate. Like in the vision, they would celebrate the fact that I had broken out of that negative thought loop. So it's as if the very same creatures that were, it's this weird trickster thing.
Dude,
the very same.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I was just listening to maybe David and Alan mention something about that on a previous Always Record.
Oh,
the
right.
Demons and the angels are the same thing, something.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to listen to that.
Yeah, that's my sense of it too, by the way. I think it's it's a lot how you are relating to those phenomena, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and that speaks to Hellraiser too, because that merges the demons and the angels in the same figures, the Cenobites.
Yes.
That's what Pinhead says about them, right? Angels to some. demons
Yeah.
to others or whatever. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, you really like that was a good
Was that a good pinhead?
that was a good impression, yeah. Angels.
Yeah.
I love Pinhead.
Yeah,
um,
totally. Uh,
I know, yeah, yeah.
I
It
wonder
sucks.
about
Yep.
Hellraiser 3. I wonder if there's Corona in Hellraiser 3. It was
Mm.
such a strong 9/11. Maybe I'll have a strong Corona as well.
Right, right. Like yeah, that'd be interesting if any strong 911 resonator includes Corona within it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, certainly seems like Gremlins does. Holy shit. What a fucking movie.
Yeah, I need to watch that again.
Dr. Catheter. God. I guess I kind of understand that. Like the catheter is truly it's like the worst, most kind of like invasive thing you can imagine, basically. So
Right, right.
makes sense that they'd call that character Dr. Catheter, you know?
Yeah, I'd never thought of that. Yeah,
Just like
it's
what is the
funny.
most like obscenely hideous example of Western medicine gone awry? The catheter.
That's it's funny because yeah, absolutely. I'd never paid attention to that name, but it says something about phallus, right? So that name has
Yes.
to do with
Yeah, yeah.
phallus. Uh, hmm.
Well, I guess not exactly because
Oh,
a
really?
catheter, a catheter could be installed in a woman too, of course, and I think the word just means falling down or downwards or something,
Oh,
flow
right,
down or something. Yeah,
right. I didn't know that. Right, right.
but
Yeah. So
certainly,
it's genital. So
a male figure named Doctor Catheter would imply to me a penis and a catheter. I don't know. Uh,
yeah,
and anyway,
some
yeah,
sort of
it implies
genitalish.
genitals and uh,
Huh.
peeing. Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
gosh, all those laboratory scenes are so weird now because he collects the ladies. They're all sick on that floor. The secretary's sneezing all the time, and Dr. Catheter takes her germs, uh,
Yeah, yeah.
puts it in his pocket, and then has them analyzed. So the whole idea of viruses and stuff is really present there
Yeah.
for kind of like for no reason. Did that seem weird to you initially? It always seemed weird to me a little bit that there's this running theme of people sneezing up there. I guess it's just to show that the result of the medical weirdness there is harming everyone and making them ill. I don't know.
Yeah, that is having ill effects on their health. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's this weird sort of slight possible association to the gremlins themselves because the gremlins are like little germs or little like
Yes. Yeah. 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 Well, then this is
creatures.
the same director that makes Inner Space, which is all
Mm.
about going in a body. So yeah, I really think there's something to that. Especially because the whole Gremlins movie is such an obvious little kind of like model of a society with a pathogenic element spreading through it, kind of like thing, you know? It's like this tower that models the different segments of society. Um, and then it has its own news system in it, and it's like a complete modeled little nation state exists in the Clamp Regency Trade Center.
Huh. I wonder if it also somehow there's something about viruses that puts the focus on the body, right?
Yeah,
On
yeah,
the inside of the body. So it's like maybe there is this sort of transition from uh, that maybe movies are tracking some sort of a transition in the focusing of awareness. That somehow awareness over this historical period is slowly focusing in on the body or something,
Mm.
on the inside.
Mm.
I don't know, something about that there is a way in which we are tunneling towards
Do you think
yeah.
that's a tunneling towards the unconscious, expressed in the only metaphor we can, which is going to be about going inside the body, because we don't believe in any
Interesting.
other thing? Or do you think it's somehow more literal, that
Mm.
there is a secret in the flesh yet to be uncovered, that Western
Oh.
medicine is about to converge on somehow, you know?
Man, that's funny. Yeah. I think it has something to do with this last thing.
Mm.
I was thinking about this today specifically. That's weird, man. Yeah, because
Mm.
I think that there is something about the body that we miss as a
Yes.
culture.
Yeah.
And I think that mm, it's something that ironically, mystical traditions are often portrayed as being very ethereal, very disconnected from the body. And yet,
Right.
so many mystical traditions are either linked to some form of prayer or meditation, which brings a heightened
Yes.
awareness of the body
Yes.
and everything it's feeling, or it has something to do with drugs, which
No,
also,
exactly. It just has a different view of the body, which is
yeah,
the body as a vessel for spirit
mm,
in
mm.
some way, you know. Um,
Yeah,
it's just what
exactly,
we were saying before, is the absence of mental health consideration. Like
exactly, yeah,
there's no psyche in the healthcare system, except in
hmm
the ghettoized world of psychotherapy, which isn't really
yeah,
allowed correct access to the thing yet. It's like what I was saying before, like anyone who has this level of traumatic access to another human being's body has to be trained in mental health as well. It's just not okay to let people poke other people,
yeah,
Dr.
yeah,
Catheter style, who don't
yeah,
understand anything about how to put people at ease and manage anxiety and feelings and trauma and all that. They need to know all that stuff. They're going to be poking around people's bodies. It's so crazy that they're separate, completely separate disciplines, and that there's so much kind of scorn, like, for the very idea of mental health, it seems, in the physical health
mm,
world. Um,
yeah,
and especially a scorn for any sort of spiritual management of anything. You know, it's like they're doctors. Their approach should be what's helping the patient cope with the thing. It's not their business to have some weird implicit agenda about, like, I don't know, like, because it just emerges this thing like I didn't receive any kind of spiritual advice, just in the sense of, like, just the very basic sense, like, emotionally, have you thought
mm,
about how you're going to cope with how difficult this is going to be? Instead, I had doctors just kind of selling me on a fantasy version of this surgery in which there was going to be very little pain and very little restriction and everything was going to be hunky dory. Uh, they should have said, this is going to be a huge ordeal. Do you have community? Do you have people that can help you?
yeah, fuck,
What are you going to do when you come up against this problem? What are you going to do when you come up against this problem? There's just nothing even remotely like that, and it's so fucked. Like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and the constant sort of assumption, like you say, that uh, any sort of anything that is explained in non-physical terms, or like any mental issue that is not directly explained in like terms of brain chemistry or something like that,
yeah,
uh, yeah, is to be. It's funny because it's like it has to be squashed. It's not enough for them to have their opinion. you have to be converted. You know, they have to like, it's as if you
Exactly. Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
believe in that, you have to be mocked and also told that it's dangerous. Like
Yes.
it's simultaneously stupid and dangerous. It's the
Mm.
Joker.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
um, I know that's really annoying, and uh, it's almost as if everything's inverted, because it's like we tell ourselves that our world is that our society is very material, and that it doesn't um, take like the spiritual into account. That's what it tells
Right.
itself, right? But at the same time, it's as if this fixation on money, for example, and on the potential of money is something non-material. A potential is something that isn't material yet. You know what I mean? It's something that,
Right. 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 Yes.
and so, and yet I and at the on the other hand, uh, feeling the body, really feeling what you're feeling, is something that, as far as I can tell, only mostly mystical traditions kind of get involved with. Otherwise, you know, uh, because I think it's because if you actually sort of focus on what the body is feeling, it has paranormal consequences. I think that's the problem. Like,
Yeah. 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 That's
like
it.
it just you and that's kind of it's a loophole in the system that really annoys it, I think, because the body is the most material thing, you know.
Oh wow, Alan. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
it it angers it that actually the thing that we have closest at hand, the most material thing that we have closest at hand, is the most direct link into the spiritual. Um,
Yes. Yes.
uh, and yeah, something, yeah, yeah.
Yes. Well, and I think just in
Mhm.
general, anything that's relying on repressing things out of awareness
Yeah, yeah,
is just uh, vulnerable, in this basic sense. Like,
right.
it's just not going to last that long because things will be noticed. And yeah, it's just the case that if you really pay attention to what's going on in your experience, um, there are all kinds of subtle things that you can't reduce to the purely physical. Um, we spend so much time, it seems to me, in our society, kind of even with things like feelings.
Yeah,
Feelings are too present to be completely repressed. Like you can't say, "I don't believe feelings exist." But so instead, what we do, like you might say, I don't believe
right,
ghosts
right. Yeah,
exist, or etc.
yeah,
You can't
yeah,
deny them completely outright, but so instead we trivialize them as being they're irrational and they're not good sources of information. You shouldn't listen to them. You should think through everything with your brain, which is also good advice because it's not
yeah,
completely untrue, but it also is ideologically weighted in a direction that consistently undermines some whole region of experience, like emotional experience. It's one thing to say, balance your feelings with some rational thinking. That's good advice. It's
hmm,
another thing to say, any feeling you have is a silly, invalid thing. Ignore it and use your rational brain instead. That's bad
yes,
advice, right? Um, I
yeah,
would
yeah,
think, anyway.
yeah, and it's
Um,
yeah, absolutely.
and that's kind of what they encourage you to do in the healthcare system. I should
Yes,
have listened to
exactly.
my intuition, which was telling me over and over again to not go along with any of these things. Um,
Mm.
uh, Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's the annoying thing. That's what you're encouraged to do. Um, and you're encouraged to do it. You're systematically
And
encouraged.
then if you have an intent that you ignore that ended up being correct, you're told to dismiss the evidence too. it's it's a coincidence then, and you should forget about it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Right. Exactly. It's fucked up. Yeah. And it's funny because that's the thing. Sync is, in a sense, the most materialistic pursuit. Be-
Yeah.
because all that it is a focusing on the material world. You're focusing deeply
Yes.
on
On
things around you.
objective patterns in the world
Yeah,
around you. Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
just paying close attention to your body and to the body of the physical world.
Well, that's what makes it so annoying. Clearly,
Yeah.
it's the same kind of thing like you were saying about the body. It's like it makes use of something that the rational mind can't discard completely, which is pattern.
Yeah.
Rational mind loves a good pattern, but then synchronicity kind of uses that as an exploit almost to launch these like funny patterns that then do these weird things to you.
Huh. Yeah. No, it's annoying. Exactly. It's exactly the area that can't be discarded. Like people will tell you, "Oh, dreams don't mean anything. Don't focus on them." And you're like, "Okay," but they can tell you not to focus on the physical world or on the events around you. Like it's this kernel of reality that the system can't tell you isn't real.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, and yet that is sort of the trash can, because that's the last place that the system would expect there to be um, spirit moving through it. That spirit moves, that somehow um, the base
Yeah,
the base
yeah.
material is the vehicle.
And it's so sync is often so flagrant in how it will do that, like how it'll use like product placement as part of.
Yes, exactly.
It'll use these patterns laid down for the most base purpose, like just like sell little kids Pepsi or something, and it'll use
Yeah.
that as a hook. Yeah.
Fuck, man. Yeah. Which again is exactly what the the system would tell you is real. Like it's
Yeah. Right.
it's exactly the domain of culture. Like um the trashiest, most sort of mainstream like product placement. It can't be denied that it's real, and because it's what it's in the it's in consciousness. It
Yes.
isn't.
Yeah.
It's not hidden. It's pushed in your face. So no one can tell you that that stuff isn't something you should focus on.
So okay. So here's a weird thing. Just a
Yeah.
weird kind of technical side
Mm.
passage here. Um, in the future, product placement is going to be designed in a very different way, I think, because it's not going to be about pushing a particular product at you. Instead, they're going to design backgrounds as probability fields with lots of different products, and they're going to track individuals' eye movements through those fields to discover information about you. So, in other words, they don't want to sell you Cheerios. They want to know, do you prefer Cheerios or Chex Mix or blah blah blah. So you'll just have a bunch of cereals back there in a cluster, and everyone will see the cereals, but not everyone's going to linger on the same serials, and they'll be able to detect really micronic movements, in the retina, and see, oh, this
Yeah.
person looked at the Cheerios for like a split instant longer than the Chex Mix, so we're going to personalize their next ad to be about Cheerios,
Yeah. Fuck, man.
So we can expect to see an explosion of visual density in the microsymbolic plane as that kind of advertising gets more terrible and complicated. So what did we just finish talking about?
Right.
I don't remember.
You had mentioned that you thought that in the future ads would be much more
Oh yeah,
tailor-made.
dense. Yeah.
It makes me think of fucking that Ready Player One. I think that's like one of the goals of the bad guys in the movie is to fill virtual reality with ads.
Yeah, it's really strange. I think it's because I think this is going to be done in more than just the visual field.
Mm-hmm.
I think that movies are going to be like, one of the things that movies are going to do is they're going to be research boxes to figure out to build profiles on the people that watch them,
Interesting.
It's like that
Fuck.
thought experiment that Christopher Nolan does with the two boats,
Yeah.
except this thing is going to watch you and try to figure out what your answer is about it, or things like that. There'll be kind of covert films will be kind of covert psychological probing and testing and research. There'll be an intelligence, like an actual artificial intelligence behind the movies, watching the audience, building profiles of the audience members according to how they react to things going on in the movies. And that'll be partly about figuring out how to sell things to people, but it'll partly be about identifying people who are gonna go do something criminal because they were a little too happy about the violence in the particular scene or something. There's all kinds of weird, horrible, dystopic possibilities there.
Yeah, I can see like the movie itself becomes a test, right?
Yes.
If you stare too long at this scene or that scene, it will give information about you.
Yes. It makes me think about the extent to which that will influence the design of film. I would imagine that big corporate films will start to have areas that are really kind of obviously constructed environments that are meant to elicit information from the people that move through them.
Well, can you say that again?
Yeah. I think that large scale blockbuster films that are kind of made by committee and that are already, the kinds of places where you'd find lots of product placement. Well, this is kind of like the version of that in the future. Those kinds of film will probably have very obviously architected areas, like spaces of film that are just there to collect information on the people that watch them. I think that the actual structure of these films will start to reflect the needs of the information gathering wing of it.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to have weird sorts of consequences because it's going to push in the direction of multi-dimensional filmmaking. You want to be able to test for a lot of things at once as efficiently as possible. And so that means that films ought to be more and more like Rorschach tests. They ought to have more possibility of kind of layered meaning transmission and therefore information reception. Many ways to interpret this scene, but what is the individual viewer's pathway through it on the basis of what these things know in terms of where you're looking, but also in terms of biometrics biometric. Are you fidgeting? Are you sweating? Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you angry? Or you could read your micro expressions and associate pretty sophisticated emotional states with different stimuli, and and it could do that to you for every such film you watched. So they could be very sophisticated in how they metered out these kinds of tests and environments. They could be split across many different media sessions. You might not realize that you're taking the same test many times in different forms, and then they're kind of aggregating on the basis of that to see sort of how often you tip in a certain direction versus some other one, and do that across many factors and build a sophisticated psychological profile about you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite terrible. It should be illegal, all that stuff.
Wow.
My opinion.
I wonder like how this might interact with virtual reality.
Yeah, well, that'll be the main kind of gathering ground, I would imagine, is people watching films in VR headsets, because that's the only place there's going to be like strong retinal tracking in the immediate future. I can imagine eventually camera resolutions on normal TVs, which increasingly have cameras in them. I can imagine those cameras becoming so high resolution that they could do retinal tracking just on the basis of the video feed of you that your TV is receiving. But in the near future, it's going to be the head-mounted displays where you have anything like reasonable, usable, because it's right on the face, and they have sensors right. And those headsets need them. They already have those eye trackings to optimize the rendering pipelines. So it's just a matter of them using the sensors that are already in those headsets at this point. At least in terms of figuring out the baseline of like where you're looking in a scene. This other stuff I'm describing, like biometrics and like extracting your facial expressions, that's all more distant future still, but not that distant. I can imagine how you would design that kind of system today. You could design one today. It's just that it's not robust or spread or anything, but all the parts are there to make that kind of thing happen.
Yeah. Fuck, that's crazy. Because then, obviously, like this combines with sync.
Yeah.
Like, like how would sync interact with that environment?
Well, so one strange thing about it is, in order to, okay, so we were just discussing before, like the films that are going to accommodate this kind of psychological extraction, but they're also going to want to do it for any film that you watch, including old films, because there's still a lot of information you could glean from that. The film doesn't have to be designed to accommodate that. You can figure out a little bit what a film means and what's going on in a film visually, automatically, and then just track you as normal. So, in other words, they would like to know if you're looking at a Pepsi or a Coke in any film, even if it's like, say, Back to the Future. So that means that they're going to run AI on Back to the Future to figure out what all the objects are in it. So they'll know what everything is, so that they can match what you're looking at to what the object is, and so that they can do all their extraction on you still. And so that means that there's going to be like databases just filled with object lists for all these old movies. Like, in this frame, these are the things that are visible on the screen, and in all the and where they are on the screen.
Yeah.
And it'll be very general purpose, probably, because they're going to want as much. They don't know what they might learn about you, so they're not just going to want to know, are you looking at a Coke or a Pepsi? They're just going to want to know, is this guy looking at furniture, or is this guy looking at tit? Because we're gonna sell him. We could sell him one or the other. You know, we could put a bunch of porn ads in his feed, or we could put a bunch of like lazy boy sofa ads. You know, so it ought to be very general. It's just like these are all the objects in here, and but then those will be, once that's listed like that, you can do all this statistical stuff I've been imagining. One really weird thing is that we'll get like sort of out of this process we'll get statistical models of these movies. It'll be possible to know like what percentage of Back to the Future is made up of shots involving cars. That would be trivial to answer once we know every object in every location in it, and so those kinds of things I think intersect with sync in some kind of very powerful way, particularly if that kind of information ever became open sourced and accessible to the public, and, but it ought to be because the tools are, there's nothing to stop anyone from building their own neural network and processing those films themselves in that way. You could do that today within limits. And so I do imagine we'll get public databases that contain that kind of, IMDb will probably end up having some giant vector cache of just all these vectors. Like, it'll be like,
right.
Like,
Yeah.
just be able to download a text file that just has in a giant list like every object in Back to the Future, etc. Weird stuff. But in terms of the actual and how that might interact with sync in kind of a live way, I think that's maybe a little more interesting, But I haven't thought through that. I wonder if you have any idea about it, because it does seem like this extraction system could notice things that you're noticing in a synchronistic way. Like it could determine that I'm obsessed with the Fox Photo film booth. It could know that about me,
Absolutely. Yep. Right.
And so that's weird because it means that these profiles are going to be pulling out information that relates to unconscious stuff potentially too. Like you might not know that you have a particular fixation, but the system could know it about you already.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah. And then how does it how does it sell you something when you're fixating on red foxes?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I wonder what that would pose to the system.
Yeah, I mean, it would probably assume that I assume it would, like, on a basic level, it would just push a lot of Fox merchandise at me, like Fox stuffed animal and T-shirts with foxes on them, and things like that. Which would be a very weird world, wouldn't it? We're just kind of noticing things a little more when you're watching a movie, ends up generating a bunch of kind of autonomous ads elsewhere in your life that reflect that object. It's already doing that with conversation topics a little bit. I notice if we mention a product or something in the Facebook chat, I'll often notice that like Amazon suddenly is like, buy this product, like just exactly the product I mentioned in iChat or in Messenger, like that, but just with things you look at, not even with things you explicitly mention.
Yeah, and I keep wondering how, in the, let's say, in the traditionally psychological read of synchronicity, without necessarily getting into a lot of the bigger, like numinous stuff, there is just this idea that every time you see a repetition of the same symbol, it could be an opportunity for you to think or feel something about that symbol that you hadn't felt before. So that
Right.
in a lot of Jung's examples, there are like I think there's this example of this guy who has been thinking about death or something, and then at a clothes store he wants to buy a shirt, but the only kind of shirts they have are black shirts, and it reminds him of like mourning, and so encountering that symbol again brings all this emotion and all these thoughts up. So that with this kind of thing, with these kind of ads, it's as if imagine that every time you encounter the red fox in some kind of a new context, it makes you think something about it or feel something about it new. This kind of a mad spiral into like an exponential increase of the amount of times that you see red foxes because they are actively being generated by this
Yeah. Yeah.
publicity thing. Like, what kind of a weird encounter? It's like a constant encounter with a symbol that is potentially trying to wake you up to thoughts and emotions that you hadn't really wanted to experience.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. How
But
strange.
but of course, I wonder whether that would help or
Or
not, like,
hinder.
or
Yeah.
hinder. Yeah, yeah. Maybe it just like over saturates you to the point where it stops meaning anything.
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's. I mean, here's the thing.
mm,
I would think. I would think that if you knew what to look for, you could identify an individuating person using this sort of technology. You know, you could notice a sink head popping. You could see like, oh, weird. Their attention is starting to feel rogue elements. Like
uh-huh.
first of all, you just notice this person has gone off the rails. They're looking at the background. Just way too much time looking at the background. Because
Mhm.
you'll just see that as a statistical reality. You'll see the
Yeah.
vast majority of viewers are looking at faces, and then over here there's some weird pocket of activity where people are looking not at faces. They're looking at everything else going on but the faces. That
Yeah, yeah.
that's going to be some little pool of like psychopaths, like, I don't know, all kinds of problem people that they probably want to isolate
Yeah.
actually, and know about. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know. That's pretty scary to me in a certain way.
Yeah, see, this exactly. This worries me because I can see both an optimistic path and a pessimistic path.
Mm,
Um, because the pessimistic path is that, well, in fact, I think the pessimistic path doesn't make sense unless I e- explain the optimistic path first. What would be what the optimistic path is simply just this idea that somehow, and it's more complicated than this, but somehow consciousness or the ego has this sort of addiction to money, to put it some way,
yeah.
because wealth it represents like the numinous material substance, like
Right.
it's the opposite of the trash can. And the ego is convinced that
It's the center of value somehow. It's
yeah,
it's it's the it's the and I mean value in the big way. Like it's we've made it the central determiner of right and wrong in some way. It's the
mm,
ethical center of the whole village. Is money.
uh-huh,
and
yeah,
and
yeah,
and so the ego as the thing that goes through choices, and it's all about right and wrong in some way. It's just very obsessed with it. Therefore, it's
yeah.
the sacred stabilizer of the
Ah,
moral architecture of the whole society.
Right. It's
It
the
is
good
that
choice.
jewel in the Monster Squad opening, you know. It's that. It's the
Right.
yeah, the Numina foundation stone of the value system.
Yeah, I think. See, I think this is what's happening exactly. The ego chooses good and wrong somehow, or and it always chooses the good. Like it always chooses what it
Yeah.
thinks is good. So as it accumulates these choices, this huge pocket of bad things builds, things that the ego considers to be bad,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And slowly that gets bigger and bigger, right? Because now it's as if what is good is more and more materially inaccessible. Like only a small group of people can have what the ego considers to be good.
Right.
Um, and and so the the thing is that it's as if then the numinous, like the ego isn't aware that the numinous also runs through the trash. Like it's trying to find the numinous in a specific area of the material world, and maybe there is something to that. Maybe there is something to that, but it's sort of maybe um, it doesn't see the possibility that what it's trying to find in gold also exists in excrement.
Yes.
It's exclusively trying to find this thing in gold, this experience, this contact with the divine, with the self, without, as if only a particular portion of the material world, the golden portion of the material world, can be in contact with that.
Yes. Yeah.
But then the thing is that because of this, money seems to it wants to make money, and in order to make money, it develops all these systems, like we're talking of, like ads, tailoring ads, and all this stuff, and in order to do that, it finds more and more complicated ways of doing it, like this whole and I am simplifying a lot, but like this
Sure.
this whole neural network thing, right? So it's but this this neural network thing, it seems to be ripe with the possibility of an uncovering of sync, because of the way it tracks pattern.
Yes.
So it's as if see money. It's as if money is doomed to uncover the god that is in the trash can, because it in order to make money, it needs to analyze the material world, and in analyzing the material world, objective patterns emerge, which destroy it. It is doomed for an ego death. But
I have
that
the
is
same kind of I have the same feeling.
Right.
Exactly. It just seems like the obvious end game of the West's obsession with vision. You know, we're busy building just the most giant, sophisticated bionic eye imaginable, which is this crazy neural net supported computer vision tech that's just coming into being here. You know. And in fact, it has two aspects. It's an eye that can see anything, but it's also a display that can visualize anything. And it's the same technology. What it detects, it can generate. We learned that with the Google Deep Dream thing that just projected dogs everywhere. That was, those were networks that detected dogs. So it also has this kind of perfect, like, fantasy visualization aspect aspect on the other side. But yeah, it just seems like, okay, like the big Western eyeball is going to see so much that it'll eventually see the most subtle thing of all, which is synchronicity, and that somehow that would be detected in a statistical way, is my guess, because I just think that would be the perfect trickstery fuck you to the whole Western project. Would be the discovery of a statistical effect that must be sort of emerging from outside linear space-time. That's just hilarious. It ought to be that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's hilarious. It's like it will emerge in exactly the kind of way that cannot be discounted
Yes.
by the current worldview.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the perfect.
Which is an actual
perfect storm.
Yeah. A material.
It will be as real as any other statistical effect, down to whatever accuracy of it happens to be. You know. And that'll just be what that is.
It's funny because we're
guessing. We're making an intuitive bet here on the basis of the fact that we think we've identified these patterns in advance. You know, I think I'm looking at patterns that look statistically significant to me. You know, but it is a bit of an extension of faith, I suppose, to imagine that these are truly there and will be shown to be there by these pattern crawling tools. But yeah, I don't know, I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, it's funny because like I tend to be like this is my optimistic view, but at the same time, talking about all this, I feel as if, what if there is a way in which all of this objective pattern can be reintegrated into the blood pyramid somehow? Like I'm wondering whether that needs to be accounted for. Maybe not. Maybe that's somehow not possible.
No, I know what you mean. Like, or I think I do anyway. Just like even just in the sense of like, okay, let's say that this thing was discovered and it was like accepted. Like, okay, there's some weird thing to do with images and time, and yeah, something crazy can happen and has happened here. My naivety is always to think that if that fact were known to be true, it would send such a shockwave through the social body that the whole old world would collapse overnight. You know.
Yeah.
But of course, that's not very realistic at all. Really, how would that happen that way? It wouldn't. It would be, first of all, even if it were known to be true, it would take a long time for different segments of society to accept that it's true. Probably it would be a slow kind of, to some degree, slow process of acceptance. Probably. And anyway, even if it were eventually widely accepted or kind of instantly widely accepted, it wouldn't solve any of the practical problems we're dealing with. We'd still have all these issues to do with resources and power and violence and control and all of this, you know. So I think it's, imagining it as a real kind of panacea moment is probably not correct, you know. But it would probably crack open the fundamental. It would end the hegemony of this particular world. You know, it would be a very strong crack that would say other ideas are possible. about fundamentally what's going on, and that would be something important, I think, historically. But I just think one has to be realistic about how historical change actually occurs. It's very rarely kind of a moment and overnight it's a different world. It's, big discoveries are made, and then it takes a lot to do with any of that knowledge. Generally we hurt ourselves with advancements in knowledge before we figure out how to use it responsibly. So
yeah, and I'm wondering, like, whether even and it's like I hate to be a bummer, because it's like I think that there's something really important in the optimistic view, so to speak, because
yeah.
but it's like, what I just keep thinking that, so in the same way that it seems that there are similarities with the lucid dream thing, where any hint of lucidity is squashed. Maybe that's too extreme a way of putting it, but it's like,
Sure.
what if the possibility of sync being something discovered is just like even sort of newer, stronger mechanisms are generated almost sort of automatically to defend from that pattern recognition, sort of being made aware. I don't know what they would be, honestly. I mean, and I don't even know exactly what the value is in wondering about these, about this.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, for me, it just speaks to the fact that we are a civilization heading into deep crisis. We're just nowhere near done with any of this. These technological changes that are happening are going to be their own kind of disruptive something when they really hit. We've been through so much already as a world, but the tightening grip of the corporate sort of military industrial complex, is not going anywhere anytime soon that I can see. These issues are going to escalate for a while. So I don't know. It's a nervous time to be alive. These things are we're existing clearly, I think, during a time of we're at the edge of some, or like approaching the edge of a collapse in the world in some way.
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of hoping it won't be that bad. Me too. But I don't know. It's a big blood pyramid. Keeps hemorrhaging the way that it does. I mean, it could really hurt people on the way down. So, like I said, here in Brooklyn, things are quieting down now in the city. I probably feel the safest I've felt in a week in terms of the level of just ambient sort of violence in the city. But Yeah, I don't know. I'm just scared enough at this point. I think I'm not convinced we're through even the immediate kind of issues here. I think we might see an uptick in violent protests again before this thing is through.
Yeah.
Maybe not, but I'm just kind of thinking back over the last few months. How many times have I told myself, it's not going to get that much worse than this. We must be finally on the way up.
Yeah.
A month ago, there was no such thing as violence in the streets. We were just all dealing with being bored at home and the fear of this virus. So
Yeah.
the trend hasn't been that great overall. I wonder if in another month we won't be saying something like, "Oh, before the nuclear warhead went off in Washington D.C."
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
that's it's so weird because it's like probably one of the things that makes this weird for me is that as things get more intense, I could swear that my kind of sinky intuition is reaching levels that it hadn't before.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think it's because we need it. We're really in the jungle now,
Yeah.
That intuition's going to help us get through this crazy situation. Maybe, I don't know.
That right, and that's the thing, because I wonder, like, it's as if it seems that an analysis of the situation can it can make us see that somehow what we call sync is being repressed. That systematically the idea of intuition and emotion as opposed to reason and I don't know, that there is some sort of way in which there is just this sort of like repression of the value of the intuitive. The intuitive is something like mucky and irrational. And so when I see these kind of what seem to me like this analysis of the situation, that somehow what is that at some level a healing of the situation would involve an integration of intuition and therefore of sync, of all these sort of the lunar. It makes it even weirder that as things get more intense, the lunar gets more intense, right?
Yeah.
Because what does that mean? It's like it gives me hope and fear at the same time. It's like hope because it seems as if the lunar is becoming stronger, but at the same time, it's as if what is to be done with all that lunarity?
Well, exactly. Yeah, the lunar is a pretty ambiguous space, as we both know. The fact that it's getting stronger isn't necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It just represents a degree of unconscious agitation in the world. Without a proper way of bringing those unconscious agitations into consciousness, they just overflow in various chaotic ways eventually. I think the same thing could have been said probably before the rise of Nazi Germany. There was a lot of intensification of the lunar. Like what kind of it might be because a portal to hell is open or is about to open.
This is what frightens me about like this way in which sync can sometimes be something to run away from, or something not 100% mm, healthy to follow or pay attention to, in the sense that, so I was talking about this sort of lucid dream mechanism, how like things like the lucid dreamer is pursued by dream characters. It's weird because I again, like, I get this feeling sometimes that there are, this may be a little detour, but it's like there are moments in my life when suddenly events constellate in a certain way, and they constellate in a sort of synchronistic way, and so that makes me think, oh wow, look, I'm in the middle of a sync storm. I'm in the middle of the sync web, and it's as if I have trained myself to feel that that is something good, that that if I'm in the middle of a sync web, it's that I am being cradled in the hands of the divine somehow,
Right,
that
right. Yeah, yeah. I know what you mean.
that oh cool, like everything is in order,
Yeah, yeah.
but I feel sometimes that, like, take a lucid dream. You may be in one location in a lucid dream, like in a store in like a city, and the store clerk is trying to prevent you from being lucid. And imagine that they're doing this in some way. Maybe they're trying to talk you out of being lucid or something. And then you walk away from that store and you go to some other completely unrelated place in the dream. And of course, whatever situation you encounter there is also very likely going to try to wake you up or something. Maybe like it's some other dream character or some other dream situation. That is a synchronicity in some sense. Like, first you were at the store and then you were somewhere else, but both places resonated with a similar theme, which is the theme of trying to prevent you from doing something. So when that happens in waking life, it can feel like, because I've trained myself to see it as something benign, I will tell myself things like, oh, this is a test, or it's an obstacle to be overcome. Like, imagine that I am suddenly at a moment in my life, I am approached by all sorts of different events and situations and people who, in a completely non-causal way, are all like subtly trying to put me down. Maybe they're trying to tell me to not follow my dreams and to not whatever it may be, to not do to not do the things that I want to do, to not express my sexuality in the way that I want to. Like, imagine that I'm sort of surrounded by all these situations, and it feels like, wow, synchronicity. I'm in the middle of a huge network of synchronistic events that are all telling me to fucking bow down or something, and so I can
totally,
so I can tell myself that it's something positive and say, oh, it's a test. It's like, if I can learn to face these situations, maybe I can become stronger, and maybe they're trying to show me my shadow or something, and things like that. And there is some truth to this, I think. But at the same time, I'm afraid sometimes that it's a meat grinder. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That no matter how much I allow myself to be pushed down by these tests, quote unquote, maybe I'm not learning anything. Maybe I'm not getting stronger from these tests. Maybe my energy's just being sucked out of me, and my will. Like, maybe there is a way in which the numinosity of sync doesn't necessarily mean that it's guiding you anywhere.